Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of Context Matters. I'm Rob Kepke, and I'm here with
none other than Nick Moreland.
How we doing, Nick?
I'm doing good today. It's another tea day. Going with the breakfast tea, a little bit of almond milk, and some sugar. And that's all the fuel I need to provide the people with the word of the day, which is
how to bootstrap a new business.
all right.
That's what we're going with. It's more of a phrase, I guess, than a word. But that's the topic we're rolling with today.
All right. And, you were anticipating me asking about how your day was.
I was ready. I had an answer prepared and everything.
I wasn't interested. I just wanted to know about this bootstrapping, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough. I'm fine. That's not that you asked,
okay.
But I'm good. So yeah, today's topic is how to bootstrap a new business. And where I want to start with this first is just defining what bootstrap is, right? So I searched online and found from lexico.com, which is the, I guess, sponsored by or a subsidiary of the Oxford English Dictionary. And the definition for bootstrapping from them, bootstrapping is getting oneself or something into or out of a situation using existing resources. Or it's a startup with minimal resources, or it's the technique of starting with existing resources to create something more complex and effective.
Gotcha.
So basically, it's starting a business with what you have without dumping in a whole lot of resources in this case. In most cases, that means money. In some cases, it also means people. Right? Now, this is a topic that's like near and dear to my heart. I've bootstrapped multiple businesses. Like I always just go back to it, no matter what I'm doing professionally. Like I just like, I guess it's kind of like my art form, right?
Gotcha.
I just enjoy, looking around, seeing what kind of resources I have available, seeing what kind of problems are in the world, and then trying to create something. And it could be something small, just like a little side business, or it could be something bigger, like my agency. I just really, really enjoy that. So I thought it'd be an interesting topic to dive into.
Gotcha. I mean, I definitely think it's a good topic now. I mean, there's so many ways that you can make, a business grow or make an entity grow with the available resources. You can start with a very small base, and through the right strategy, you can expand that and multiply that into something much greater within, a relatively short amount of time if you take the right steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's one of the things we'll, talk about is what are those right steps? And we'll break that down a little bit because there's similar paths depending on the type of business you're doing. There's service-based businesses and there's product-based businesses. And so I have kind of steps for you guys and then some examples of businesses I've started and kind of how I've gone about doing that as well.
Gotcha.
But where I really want to start at though is why I think almost every new business should bootstrap. And I say almost because I don't want to throw out like a blanket statement and then people be like, well, this kind of business doesn't. But I can't think of any right now off the top of my head that shouldn't bootstrap. And the biggest reason that I think a business should bootstrap from the beginning is it mitigates risk, right? Starting a business is difficult. Starting a business is intensive, and starting a business is no guarantee of success.
Yeah.
And if you are able to mitigate your risk up front, then you essentially have more swings, right? You can either go all in, life savings in, you get one attempt at it, and if you miss, game over, right? You're picking back up the pieces starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Or you can start off, take a stock of what the resources you have around you, and you can put a feeler out and see, right? And then build on top of that if there's success, and build on top of that if there's success, and continue to move it up. So I wrote down here 2 reasons in particular why I think every business should start off bootstrapping. I guess 2 reasons that kind of play to my mitigating risk point. The first is just because you're good at a skill does not mean you should start a business. Now, I'm not saying you can't start a business, but what I'm saying is just because you're a personal trainer
Yeah.
doesn't mean you can run a gym. Just because you're a photographer doesn't mean you can run a studio.
Yeah.
Just because you're a marketer doesn't mean you can run an agency.
Just because you're a babysitter doesn't mean you can open up a daycare
Right.
and have it be successful.
Exactly. And I think a lot of times people, they get into this mindset of, I'm really good at what I do,
Yeah.
therefore I should turn it into a business. Or I'm really good at what I do and I'm tired of paying somebody else a portion of my proceeds. And that's all well and good. And I think that's fine to think that way. Like, I think that's how, one of the reasons I got started to open my gym is because I was like, oh, I think I can do this better or more efficiently or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
But I think what people need to understand is being good at your craft is one of numerous things that it takes to actually run a business. And a lot of times it's not even the most important. Just because you're the best at what you do does not mean you can effectively run a business.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, you have to worry about, you have to have, in order to run a business, you have to have a baseline understanding of accounting, marketing, operations, sales, right? Knowing how to delegate tasks to people because you can't do everything. There's all of these things that have nothing to do with your actual craft.
Yeah.
And if you start off and dump your life savings into something, a business that you want to start, then you're essentially up against a clock of having to figure out all of these things.
Before your base runs out.
Exactly. Right. So that's the first reason. And the second reason that I think almost every business should start off bootstrapping is money is a multiplier, right? Money can be used to either take something that's working and make it better, or take something that's not working and make it worse.
Yeah.
Right. And so, if you start a business and typically when you start a business, you don't know what the people necessarily want. You don't know what your audience wants. Hopefully you know who your audience is.
Yeah.
Right. But you have a vague idea. Maybe you have a little bit of positive reinforcement. People are maybe paying you, people are telling you that they like this idea. But you're not 100% sure. So if you go all in, put all your resources into it, open a business, right? That money you've now spent, if you were wrong in your assumption, right, then
There's no return.
there's no return.
Yeah.
And all it's done is expedite the fact that you were wrong.
So what's like, in terms of feelers, how do you use these feelers to see what your audience wants, like investing small pieces at a time to kind of get a bigger picture of where the investment should go?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll dive in a little more specific later, but I think to kind of go off that, the number one thing people should be looking for is somebody willing to pay me? And that's, if I were to simplify it, that would be the number one thing, right? Is someone actually willing to hand me money?
Yeah.
A lot of times people will say, oh, I have this idea, and they'll tell their friends and family, and they'll be like, we love it. This is a fantastic idea. You should definitely do that.
Yeah.
Right? But nobody's actually giving you any money for it, and the
Yeah.
dynamic completely changes when you say, okay, great, here's this thing I'm offering you, pay me $100 for it. And if they're like, no, I'm good. Then
Yeah. Well, also, I think what people don't think about is the whole process. From the first email to the actual thing that you're creating or the service you're providing, to like the post-production to the end, and then like, the setup for a future investment or a future purchase or a future involvement. It's like the whole process from like pre to, the actual doing to post and whole is, I think, a big determining factor of if someone's willing to give you the money to provide that service. Like if you're missing one of those steps, let's say you get the email, you do this job, and then it takes you forever to get it done, or you don't follow up, or they feel like, you're too busy for them and you're kind of just like an assembly line, then that person probably won't invest in you again if they don't feel that, the flow of the whole process is, is taken care of.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that up because it is important, but it's actually less important than people think.
Well, you're the marketer. I'm coming from the perspective of a creative, of a musician or of a photographer. So it's
right. Yeah,
I like these conversations because I don't have the background that you have. I just have from the other side of the fence, like someone who's creating things without like the marketing or the business base that you have. So it's always good to hear like, you know, your reaction to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because it's coming from two different angles.
Yeah, and it's actually, I love it because it validates the name of this podcast, Context Matters, because the context does matter for what we're talking about now, right?
Yeah.
The advice or the, what we're talking about for an artist or a musician, because of how that's delivered and how people perceive it and how it's used, right, in the world, there is some difference. I could definitely see, I'd have to think about it a little bit more, but there's definitely a difference in the advice I'm giving versus, a creative who's trying to make a living. Right? In that case, I would say you probably need more of a portfolio to show people. And I actually don't know what that process would be to like pre-sell something. But that's what I was going to get into with what you were saying, is because a lot of times if you've found the right audience and you are solving the right problem, you can get people to prepay you for your services. Now it's up to you to actually deliver on that, right? Last thing you want to do is have somebody prepay for your services and then you just up and vanish, right? It's not good business practice, and it shouldn't even be something we're talking about, but it does happen. But that is the highest form of validation in my mind, is if you can get somebody to pay you prior to the delivery of the goods or services. Because then they are so excited for what you have to offer them that they're willing to pay you ahead of time for it.
But that could be, are you talking about like a security deposit or like paying for the entire thing? Because I know, at least for photography, just to protect your time, you'll require like a down payment. Like you want to shoot on Saturday the 27th, well, you're gonna have to pay for, I don't know, whatever percentage you have. I mean, for me, it might be 50% or 30% or 80%. And then that just kind of like guarantees that they're gonna show up for the service, and that if they don't, I'm gonna get compensated for someone, ditching or not holding up their end of the bargain.
Right, yeah. So again, the context matters, right? So the assumption here is that you're brand new, right? Your first time as a freelancer on your own, your first time doing your own or working for somebody else, and now your first time doing something on your own. If the way I would position it is, obviously you need to know your audience and feel them out. But you make an ask up front for basically an upfront payment for delivery. And typically how it'll work is you'll give a steep discount in exchange for the upfront payment.
Gotcha.
Right. So doing that does a couple of things, right? One, it enables you to have cash flow right away. And then it's up to you to deliver on that promise, right? Now you're also guaranteed that you're going to have a customer long term, right? Or at least for a certain amount of time. And they benefit from it too, because they're excited enough about your product. And then you are also giving it to them as a significant discount, right? And so this is a common practice. Let's say like if you're building a software product, right? You want people to test your product, but you want people who are actually customers, people who are going to give you feedback versus people who are in your product and they're just, playing around with it. And the feedback doesn't mean as much because they're not going to be sticky or they're not paying customers, right? So, you say, all right, if you pay upfront for a year, we're going to give you a 50% discount for life on the product. Right? And the idea here is, they're more important to you at this stage as users of the product, as people who are paying you a little bit of money for validation, and as people you can use for testimonials down the road. And
to get you to the next level when you're trying to build. And then once you take care of that, then you can expand, and then you're not as dependent on that first batch of people putting down this down payment to give you that initial cash flow to get out of the, development period where you're still feeling things out and you don't really know the exact numbers that you're going to have.
Right. Yeah. And that's the way you got to think about it. It's a step-by-step process. The biggest, attribute you can have when you're bootstrapping your own business is patience.
Yeah.
Right? Because, the way I look at it is just a chess match. Every
Yeah.
move I make, right, I'm looking ahead to how can I take that and flip it into my next move. If I get a customer, how
Yeah.
can I, and if I am giving them a big discount up front,
Yeah.
right, how am I flipping that into an additional asset? I think a lot of times people just think of it as the money. Well, I should be paid my worth.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that easy, right?
Yeah.
It's not that straightforward.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you start moving away from, working for somebody versus to be an entrepreneur, because it's not a straight line, and you constantly need to be saying, what are the assets I have available and how can I flip them into something else?
Well, for me, it makes me think if you're a trainer, let's say you start out training at a gym that's not yours. Like you have clients at a gym that you're using, the gym's getting a cut. You build up clientele, you get enough steady business that you're okay with leaving that gym, getting your own space, and maybe, owning the space and then bringing your base that you started over there and then having that be the foundation of your next business.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly so I'm investing in a basketball training gym in Michigan, and that's exactly what we're doing. So, it's one of the actually two of the guys, my business partners, they are trainers, and they have their client base and they want to take the leap into entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So, right now we're building everything out for the gym, and then they're going to, bring their client base over. And so we have a built-in client base. And our conversations right now are all around, who do you have access to? Like what resources are available to you now that you can then, flip and leverage into additional clients, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. Like we've said, go ask all of your clients for testimonials, your current ones, right? Let's get them talking to their friends and family. Can we have them reach out? Do you guys have connections into high school coaches, middle school coaches, et cetera? So again, it's just about seeing what's available on the resources and then, making something happen with what's available to you.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Let me see. So that's very good stuff. I like that. So let's.
I think honestly, I think this tea gets me stimulated, but also keeps me calm. So I'm remaining active, but I'm not too jumpy. I'm not jittery, and that's what the people want. They want someone they can trust who has a constant flux of energy without peaking or spiking.
Yep.
I keep it smooth.
Yeah, you got to give the people what they want.
I still don't know how this became my mug, but
it was actually my mug earlier, and then
okay.
I swapped it out because you had it on the last one, so I wanted you to have it again.
I got it.
All right, so where I want to go next is I want to talk a little more specifics about how to actually bootstrap a business.
Yeah.
All right, and so we'll start first with a service-based business, and then we'll separately talk about a product business.
And then just explain, how you distinguish between a service-based business and the product-based business. Like, just give an example of like a service-based business that people already know, just so they can.
Yeah, so service-based business would be photographer, trainer, marketer, something where the deliverable is not necessarily a product, but something that you do for somebody else.
Gotcha.
Right? Versus a product-based business is going to be an actual physical good that is delivered to somebody. So
for the service-based one that I've seen that's kind of like blowing up right now is like the mobile dog grooming trucks that will drive to your house and like do a haircut and a shampoo for your dog.
Yeah.
Like I see them in my neighborhood all the time.
Really?
They'll pull up in front of your house, walk your dog in there. 2 hours later, hour and a half later, you got a clean dog with a fresh cut. So,
man, I wonder if they come out to my parents' house. They got a big Bernese Mountain Dog. That's a love.
Oh, I thought you were gonna ask if they would go to your parents' house to give you a haircut.
No, just the dog.
Okay,
just the dog. And also, you're assuming I live with my parents.
What's wrong with living with your parents?
Nothing's wrong.
Okay.
All right. So, anyways, after that weird digression, let's hop in. So, we're gonna start with service-based businesses, and I want to start there because In my experience, starting a service-based business and bootstrapping a service-based business is a lot easier than starting a product-based business.
Why?
For a product-based business, you need to source the resources required to actually create the physical good.
Yeah.
Versus with a service-based business, you typically don't, right? That's something that you can, assuming you have the knowledge to execute on it, you can execute on pretty immediately after. Or, if say you're a photographer, you need minimal equipment to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right. Or you could borrow equipment or something like that.
Or rent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, steps to bootstrapping a service business. So step one, identify your target audience, right? So you need to identify who they are, their wants and their needs, and how your service would satisfy them. That's weird. I felt like that was weird when I wrote that down. Satisfy them. Yeah. Meet their wants and needs, how your service would meet their wants and needs.
Gotcha.
And then how you can reach them for free or cheaply. And when I say reach them, I mean, once you've identified your audience, how are you going to get in front of them, right? Is this somebody in your network? Is it via social media? Is it going to a networking group, etc.? So that's the first step. Second step is you offer your service.
Yeah.
Right? So, at this point you should know, and say for like I'm a digital marketer, I go to a networking group, I get in front of businesses who need digital marketing services, and I offer the service to them, right? Now, if you're new into the space, right, and you want, again, the goal is to get momentum. The goal is to start getting clients on board, right? So at this point, you should be trying, we talked about this earlier, right? You should be trying to sell as large a package as possible that's reasonable for payment up front in exchange for giving a deep discount on that product or service, right? And this is assuming that you don't have any testimonials or resources to point to validate, right? So again, this is like you're just new to the game of photography, right? And you're just like, I want to be an entrepreneur, right? Versus if you have been, say, like working for a company for a really long time, you could potentially point back to the work you've done at that company, and use that. And in that case, you can, charge, more, something that's reasonable. But again, the idea here is you potentially want that cash flow up front,
So I could say, like, let's say I'll say, I'll do 4 photo shoots for the price of 2 if you pay up front and within this time period. And then you could potentially get, let's say you charge $350 for each family photo shoot and someone wants to do 1 for each season, then you could potentially get that money up front. And like, that's what I would have in my head, at least for what I do.
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, the important thing here is you've now had a client pay up front, so they're going to have their product or service, or they're going to use you long-term or multiple times in this scenario. And then you have that cash flow, right? And now that cash flow enables you to see, okay, maybe I actually need more equipment so that I can flip my next, my next gig. I can look more professional, right? Maybe you need to create some sales collateral, right? Maybe you can take that cash flow and create a website. Maybe you can use that cash flow to create business cards,
Maybe you invest it to get the next round of people that will invest in more photo shoots in the future. So you'll invest, maybe half of that will go towards advertising, which maybe the return will be tenfold if you get, 10 more clients or from that one advertisement. So.
Right, exactly. And so again, it's a chess match. You're always looking ahead. You're saying, when you bootstrap, you come in and you're saying, I don't have resources or I have very limited. And then your first move is to get more resources. And then your next move is to leverage those new resources for something else, right? But if you're constantly playing this one-off game of you pay me for exactly for what I need, then you don't really have a ton of margin to work with at that point. Because you're basically just paying yourself, right? And you have to wait till the next thing comes around, or maybe you do the next job and then they pay you after the next job. So again, this way you have resources available to go out and do things, which you can then flip into more business coming back your way.
Gotcha.
Right. So then, as we discussed, next step 3, leverage your early customers, right? So you should be creating testimonials, case studies. If you're a service-based business, you should be setting up a Google My Business, and you should be getting reviews on there. And I like to do that versus having people write testimonials, because I can get it into a public place, right? That people tend to trust more than ones that are posted on your website.
Yeah.
And then you can repurpose them. Once they're in the public sphere, right, you can then take them and do whatever you want with them. But if I were to get somebody to leave me a testimonial, just send me an email testimonial, and then I took that and I can't put that on Google My Business, right? So you get more mileage.
It looks better too also when you have like a picture of that person, like it's from like a profile like that they've already developed, and then they're writing like within like an app that already has a community. Then it's like more valid than just the words. Then it's like you can actually look this person up, and then they exist. It's not just you can make up any name and attach it to a testimonial. We don't know if that person's real or not, but at least if it's like connected to like a different service or an app or a community where they have their photo and their information and stuff, you could say, okay, this person does exist, and this is a real thing, and it's not a marketing ploy. Right. Like so much Amazon stuff, you'll see like the text is all like uppercase and it's all like bold, and you'll have like 1,000 5-star reviews but no verified purchases for these like weird third party like Chinese and like these companies you never heard of. Like why do they have 5,000 5-star reviews and not one single like person has posted a photo with the review of the product or anything verified? So
and I think to that point, like people are smart, right? People are used to being marketed to, and like those old tricks of doing something like that, or getting testimonials that people give you and putting them on their site and like only saying really nice things about yourself. Like people see right through that now, right? So now it's a matter of again leveraging these resources, but doing it in a way that are actually going to be beneficial, and having it on a public place that is a verified profile. That's going to do more for you than getting it on to just somebody sending you a testimonial, right?
I mean, it might trick your grandmother into buying a secondhand Chinese bidet for a bathroom, but I don't think it's going to work on this generation anymore.
Yeah, it's working less and less and less. There's still some people that fall for that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
All right, so then step 4, right? So step 4, this is assuming you've now been leveraging your past customers for additional customers.
Gotcha.
Right. So now you have a little momentum, cash flows coming in. Now you want to document your process.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is saying when I go on site as a photographer, right, this is step 1, step 2, step 3, in as much detail as you possibly can. And the reason you do this is so that you can start delegating.
Yeah.
We just had this conversation off camera a little bit ago. And it's just a matter of, if you want to grow, you can't do everything.
Yeah.
It's just not possible. We talked earlier how you have to worry about marketing and operations, and you have to know enough accounting that you can talk to somebody about it, right? You need to know enough about these things at a minimum that you can talk to someone and understand if they know what they're doing or not. That's the baseline.
Yeah.
Right? Ideally, having more knowledge would be better.
Yeah.
So documenting your processes is that first step to being able to hand it off to somebody else, so that now you can go focus on these other points to grow your business. Yeah. And step 5 is to increase your prices. And this is an important step once you have everything else established, because that's how you're able to generate enough margin on what you're doing in order to pay somebody else to do the work, so you can focus on these other aspects of your business, right? Otherwise, you're stuck in this, I'm trying to think of things that go circular, carousel.
You're stuck in a like a teacup ride of death.
Right, where it's just constantly getting paid for the work that you do.
Yeah.
And then not having anything left over besides just to pay for yourself, right? And because like I said, earlier, we'd have, accounting, we have marketing, we have operations, you have all of these things that you need to take care of. And if you don't have the money to actually pay somebody to do the work that your business does, you're not going to be able to take care of those things.
You'll be treading water. Like exerting a huge amount of energy to not potentially move that far and just, like you said, be trapped in that cycle. And it's really hard to sustain the business when you feel like you're putting all you have into something and it's moving like at, the pace of like a piece of hair growing.
Yeah. And I think like pricing is a very complex topic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of psychology that goes into it. But I think fundamentally it's important to understand that if you're trying to be more than a freelancer or a solopreneur, if you will, you have to be able to charge enough so that you can start delegating work out to other people, right? And it could be as simple as you hire a VA to do check your emails, right? You just need to take stock of everything that you're doing and then start delegating that stuff out to people, and that is going to cost you money, cost you resources, right? And so it's just being able to have those resources. All right, cool. So before we get into the product one, I just wanted to give a quick example. So my agency, Perform Growth, we're a service-based business, and we followed a very similar trajectory to this to get where we are right now. We have 12 clients roughly right now. And we started because I was freelancing, right? And then one of my first agency clients, I, was just talking to him and telling him what we do and stuff. And he was like, oh, we're looking for those services. And I was like, cool. Well, we charge this very high number, right?
Yeah.
And he said, okay. And I was like, oh shit. Like that was great.
Yeah.
And that was the move that I needed, right, to get me the capital to then start delegating. And then I hired, a virtual assistant, and then I, brought on another marketer more on the creative side to take care of a lot of the creative work we were doing, right? And then that enabled me to take them, and I leveraged this first client numerous times to get additional clients.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of the path. So following this blueprint, isn't just theoretical. This is actually how we got started for our business, and we're able to continue to grow. And it's the same thing. Like I keep very detailed records of kind of our cash flow and like where it should go. And it's just a constant chess match of, okay, we have this surplus this month. Yeah. Where can I put this to gain additional leverage to then get the next client? And I have put $0 into the business and zero risk into the business. And I've done businesses before this where there was more risk, more overhead, and luckily those turned out okay. But going into this one, it was kind of just like, I'm doing this thing and got a client. The cash flow was immediately there, and we've been profitable ever since. All right, cool. So for that. After all of that, let's move into bootstrapping a product business.
All right.
Now, before we go into the details, which are very similar to the service business with a few big differences.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this concept of minimum viable product.
Okay.
Have you heard of this concept before? It's okay if you haven't.
Well, when I think of MVP, I think of Mike Piazza.
All right. Is that Mets catcher?
That's right. And his Pantene Pro V commercials, or maybe it was Head and Shoulders, but.
All right. Well, this is a different MVP.
I'm open and I'm willing.
You're open to having multiple MVPs in your life?
I'm receptive to the strategy.
Okay. So minimum viable product. So this is common vernacular used in the startup community. But what it means is creating the I guess smallest, I'm trying not to use minimum viable product in this.
Gotcha.
The smallest iteration of what you're building, in most cases software, right? That gets the idea across to your potential customer what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. It could be a wireframe. It could be a demo. I mean, it could be a wireframe depending if it's a very complex product, but it could be a demo. It could be a very stripped down version of your software in terms of stripped down with features, but it does enough to demonstrate value to the client.
Yeah.
But the idea here is when you have a product, you don't want to spend a lot of time making that product perfect. Because it goes back to what we've been saying, where when you start a business, you're basically taking a giant guess.
Yeah.
You have no idea. You have a hypothesis and you're testing that hypothesis. And so if you spend a lot of time making kind of the features around your hypothesis super shiny, then there's more risk of it actually failing, right? You've put more time and effort into it, and you have really gained nothing that much from that.
But don't you also, you don't know how exactly your product or your app is going to work until it's in the real world. So you can always release a firmware update afterwards to address the issues that you might not even know exist, instead of trying to make a perfect product and waiting too long and missing the window. Does that make sense? Because when it comes around in my head is like, when something goes out and, they think it's ready, but then these things pop up that there's no way to know unless a mass audience over multiple platforms are trying to use this entity you created.
Absolutely. So I think what you're referencing in particular is like bugs in a product.
Yeah.
Right? And that's 100% accurate in the case. And I'm taking it even a step back from that and saying, is your product even something people would use?
Yeah.
And if you are building a product for, so I'll give an example. So we're building a software product for local businesses. It's a delivery software.
Yeah.
And we don't want to spend too much time. Like, we have this grand vision for what it's going to be, right? We want it to integrate into a bunch of different storefronts and point of sales. And we want somebody to be able to just place an order on a website, and then a car would come and pick it up at the restaurant or the store or the retail store or whatever, and then it would drop it off. And that's this grand vision. But what we've been trying to do up to this point is just narrow down that focus and say, what's the number one piece of value we want to give people out of this product, right? It's the fact that what we do is we aggregate different couriers, right? So like Postmates, Deliv, Roadie, and they're able to present the best price and the best price, best distance, based on the product or service that's being sold.
So it's kind of like a sky scanner type thing, where it's scanning all the potential prices and all the potential rates at that given moment, and then picking the best one and showing you the competition. Are you
Yeah, similar to that, where it's, exactly. We're aggregating all these different prices, and then you, as the business right now, can just choose and go. But the point wasn't to talk about the actual software in depth, but the point is, we don't want to spend a lot of resources and time building out all these features, and so we have built our MVP and have gotten people actually using the product in its minimum version, right? And for us, you have to make a lot of sacrifices. So we would like it to be a streamlined integration, but right now, what we're saying is if we're providing enough value to the business, then they're going to be okay with some manual inputs in our platform. And then once they're seeing value from there, then we can go and build out integrations to make their life a lot easier. Right? So that's in essence minimum viable product.
Okay.
Right? So we go into how to bootstrap a product business. So this is more difficult than bootstrapping a service-based business for, I believe I mentioned earlier, the reason being you need to be able to source how to build the product, right? Ideally, you have those skills internally, but it could potentially be, if you're building software, maybe you're a coder and you can just go ahead and build it, which is the ideal scenario. But maybe you're building a physical product, like you're a baker, right? And if you're a baker, you need a kitchen, right? And you need a kitchen that's commercially licensed, depending on what you're selling, or you need to have your there's a bunch of laws with food. And so, you have to take those into consideration. If you're building a widget, you need a widget factory, right? You need somewhere to make that. All right, so that's the big difference here. And so a lot of the steps are pretty similar, right? So step one, identify your target audience. We've already discussed that. Step two now is sourcing the equipment and the resources.
All
right. So when you do this, ideally you want to source it, but not purchase it, right? So you want to know where you have access to it. You want to know how much it's going to cost for you to use it. And ideally, it should be on demand. This should not be something that you have to purchase up front. If you're, again, let's use the baker as the example. If you're a baker, you want to know where's the kitchen that I can go and bake if somebody wants to purchase something from you.
Yeah.
Right. If you're, I don't know, can you think of any other businesses
For
products?
product based?
Say you're a t-shirt making company. Right?
Yeah.
Where can you go get these shirts printed?
Screen printing. Yeah. Or if, let's say your company makes surfboards.
Yep.
Like, where's the space that I can operate to create these specific, tailored custom surfboards?
Yeah, exactly. And so you understand exactly where you would be able to get it done and exactly how much it's going to cost you, right? And then step 3, determine how long it's going to take. So once you know how you're going to do it and you've sourced the equipment and the resources, determine how long it's going to take you to when somebody purchases for you to deliver.
Yeah.
Right. And this is important so you can set expectations with the client or with the customer. And I think pushback that I might get at that point is people being like, "Well, I need to deliver right away."
Yeah.
And a lot of times you don't. Right. And again, it goes when we were talking about the service and pricing and discounts. Right. People will be lenient with you. It just has to be some give and take.
I think if it's like a handmade, like a well crafted, item or object, I think people will be more lenient because it's not possible to expedite that process, and that might be what separates your product from other products they want to buy. And they might, like you said, if you manage the expectations, they'll sign on to waiting 6 to 8 weeks if they know they're going to have a unique, handcrafted item, as opposed to just ordering something off Amazon and getting it the next day and not having the same quality.
Yeah, exactly. And so then step 4 there is create an MVP. So we talked about what that was, but at this point, what you're doing is you're creating a minimum viable version that enables you to make the sale.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times, what you're trying to do at this point is you're just trying to get over somebody thinking that you can't execute on what you're promising.
Yeah.
So, if you are promising, I'm going to go back to the baking example, if you're promising a catering event, maybe you do some samples, right? So they can see what those samples are,
Or if you're doing like the surfboards, you have a demo line of surfboards, like a longboard, a short board. I don't know why it's so hard for me to say that. And then maybe you have like a skimboard. And that's the demo you put out, and then people can kind of, see the quality of your product, and then also see, the look, the feel, and the brand.
Yeah. And
without you needing a physical store at that moment.
Right. And even, I guess the argument there could be, this is going to cost me money at this point.
Yeah.
And it might, right? And this is where it gets a little bit trickier with products is, products cost to actually create services, right? There's nothing physical you need to deliver on.
Yeah.
So potentially, right, and this is Kickstarter, right, is a good example of this. Places you can go where you don't actually have to have the physical product created. And so MVP, in the sense that we're talking about here, is again just something that's enough to build trust that people think you can deliver on it. Right? It could be just a slide deck of what that process is going to be, what that final piece is going to be, right? And that could potentially be enough. Again, if you're solving a burning problem or you're making something that people really want, positioning in the right way, you can get away with a lot of stuff in terms of not having a physical product there.
Yeah.
Right. But again, it's just building trust at that point. So then step 5, offering your product. So this is where you try to sell it, right?
Yeah.
You have your MVP, you try to make the sale. If you need to, you're again giving a discount, right? to get them to actually pay.
Yeah.
But then try as best you can to get paid before you actually have to deliver the product.
Yeah.
And this is key, especially for product based,
Yeah.
because now you can use that money they just paid
Yeah.
to make the product.
Get the pre-orders.
Exactly. Maybe you don't make any margin on this, right? Maybe
Yeah.
you just eat the cost, right? But
Yeah.
this way, you haven't created something and then tried to go sell it. And if you can't sell it,
Yeah.
you've wasted that money and that time. Right now, you get the money and then you take that money and you go purchase it, or you go purchase the resources to make it.
You build the business and then you sell the product instead of building the product and then trying to sell the business or build the business.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, in this case, if the chicken is the pre-orders, then it's the chicken.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Good. That was good.
You like that one?
That was good. I like that.
All right.
All right. Step 6: leverage your early customers. So you should be getting reviews, testimonials, case studies, etc.
Yeah.
Right. We talked about that. Step 7: document your process. And step 8: increase your prices if you were giving a discount before it. Factor in the margin that you need in order to take care of all these other aspects, delegating the contractors, marketing, operations, etc.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you give them the discount, it creates a sense of urgency. This is a window that's going to close after this amount of time. This is your chance to get in and get it at this price, because it probably won't be this price ever again. So I think also in that early stage, creating some sort of urgency or creating some sort of window, people have the illusion they need to jump through before it closes, would also help to push that initial capital that you're going to reinvest into your company.
Yeah, and it's a good tactic, having these like founders clubs, right? Where if you join now, you get this price for life, or you get exclusive access to certain things,
Yeah.
right? Because it creates this air of exclusivity, and people want to be a part of that. So it's a good tactic to employ when you're starting out your company.
I mean, from the trading aspect, I don't really know too much about that, but would you also do that in terms of shares? Like have people try to buy into shares of the company before it's even, is that a thing? I mean,
you absolutely can.
Yeah.
I think that is a little more complex of a topic.
Yeah.
But, because I would just say it depends what it is, depends what the money's coming in. I have done that before where I've had, raised capital from an angel investor, and, it's kind of like what's coming along from, like, what are you getting from that?
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably it's actually interesting. We should make a note of that and talk about that. Just kind of like raising capital and like when you should and when you shouldn't, pros and cons, etc.
Gotcha. Please.
Yes. Oh, me?
Well, you did go first, and it was a split second after that I interrupted you. So, as a gentleman, you beat me to the race.
All right. So I just want to kind of tie a bow here with an example of a baking business, right? And I used this in the explanation, or in the when I was talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
And I did it because I earlier this year helped my wife start a delivery-only baking side business called The Modern Brit.
Gotcha.
And again, this isn't theoretical. This is exactly kind of the template that we've been following to get it off the ground. And we identified the target market. In her case, it's going to be the people that are had been eating her stuff before, like the close circle there. So we knew where to reach them, right? We sourced equipment, so we made contact with a connection in our network so we could use his commercial kitchen.
Gotcha.
There's some complexity for the rules because we live in Virginia. Virginia is very lenient on home kitchens, but Maryland isn't. A lot of our customers were in Maryland, so we had to source a commercial kitchen.
Gotcha.
So we had that, right? We knew the cost of the ingredients. We knew what she was going to sell, everything. And then, that was step 3. Created an MVP. So people had already been tasting her stuff, so they knew that it was good. So we were able to kind of get over that hurdle of trust, right? And then we offered the product. So what we did is we just set up a Facebook page free, and then we invited everyone to the page. Actually, we didn't even do that. I wrote a message on my Facebook page, just said, hey, my wife is starting this baking business. Who wants yummy scones? And we had people reach out and say, I want the scones. And we said, okay, this is how much it is. And they paid us. And then we made the scones and delivered it to them.
Nice.
And that's kind of where we're at now, right? kind of step 5, step 6. The volume isn't quite there just because we haven't been pushing too hard on it, and it's a little bit of a side business. But moving forward, as we were continuing to push that, then we would go into documenting the process, and then increasing the pricing and these other additional steps that I talked about.
Great. Well, I mean, it's good to see it actually applied to something physically existing in the world, and not just sit here and talk strategy without anything grounding it. So
that
absolutely is literally the same steps you talked about you're doing right now for this and other businesses. So
no, definitely trying to be less theoretical and more practical in what we're doing. Cool. Well, do you got any other questions for me?
I think for right now, I'm pretty good. I have a lot of new strategies that I can implement into my own freelancing business right now. And I think I have a broader scope now of how it works. Kind of takes some of the magic out behind the scenes as the actual concrete steps to get to the end product that we see in the businesses that we support. So thank you for your analysis and your strategy and your tea.
Yes, of course. So just to wrap up, guys, the number one benefit of bootstrapping your company is you're mitigating risk. You get to take multiple swings at an effort of starting a business versus just one big one, which everything could go basically to shit. So the biggest thing you need when you're doing this is just patience. So have patience. Thanks for listening and or watching, and we will see you guys next time.